Hi everyone, it's Matt, and I'm going to be starting a new format for my YouTube videos. I think each week I'm going to take a standard deck and play it in one of these traditional standard events. And my goal is to highlight 52 different standard decks over the next 52 weeks. So welcome to week one. Today I'm going to be playing Croaky's Ultimate Bant list in the event. I've played it a little bit on the ladder. It feels really powerful and it's a lot of fun to play. So we're going to take it through this event and see how we do. If you haven't seen this deck before, it basically is a combination of Planeswalkers topped off by Nissa and Hydroid Krasis. And it has a lot of ramp as well. It uses things like Uro and Growth Spiral to get a mana advantage and then just overwhelm your opponent with Planeswalkers. So we're going to play first. And this looks like a really solid hand. This will allow us to Growth Spiral on turn 2 into Tamiyo and then Nissa. And I think I do want to keep Knight of Autumn. It's really versatile here, and we already have 2 Planeswalkers and ramp. So I'm going to keep that on top. It's good against a lot of the current decks. Can blow up enchantments, artifacts, gain you life, or just be a 4/3 creature. So here we'll look to Growth Spiral on the end of our opponent's turn. Interesting. So they might be playing some sort of Gatebreaker Ram deck. We'll put that out there tapped. And one of the things that I really like about this deck is the ability to just generate a ton of card advantage. So here, I think it makes sense to name probably Teferi, since we already have a Nissa in hand. We could also name Hydroid Krasis. I think I'm actually going to name Hydroid Krasis here, because if we can stick a Nissa, Hydroid Krasis should close out the game pretty quickly. And we did hit, as well as get an Uro in the graveyard, so a really solid Tamiyo uptick. And comically, Tamiyo's passive says that nothing can force us to sacrifice permanents, so Angrith's Rampage, highly ineffective against Tamiyo there. Okay, we'll run out Nissa. And this time, I think, yeah, we're going to uptick again. And now it does make sense, I think, to find a Teferi. Alright, just a lot of lands in the yard there. With Nissa in general, you want to select lands that are non-forest, because if they do get destroyed, you're not losing as much mana for your next turn. Alright, so here we have a lot of different options. Probably bringing back Uro is a good start, so let's go ahead and do that. And I'm not too concerned about attacking our opponent here. Get rid of a bunch of lands in the graveyard. In general, with Uro you want to exile your lands, since Tamiyo can bring back other cards from the graveyard. You want to keep things that may be relevant in the yard. And then Elspeth Conquers Death can bring back Planeswalkers and creatures, so you also want to try to leave those in your yard. And here we have just enough to play Elspeth Conquers Death, I believe. So we'll go ahead and do that.
Behold, nature's true power.
And I think I'm just going to return a Mystical Dispute. Actually, yeah, Mystical Dispute feels fine here.
I have learned much from my enemies.
Alright, and that'll do it for game 1. So that played out pretty much exactly like this deck is supposed to. In terms of what we want to sideboard, we didn't see a whole lot from our opponent. They looked like they were just playing some sort of Jund deck, that makes me a little bit less inclined to keep in the Knight of Autumn, as it doesn't seem super relevant against them. I think we could reasonably bring in Aether Gust, possibly Agent of Treachery, and definitely Dream Trawler. They probably have several ways to remove our permanents. They may be less likely to keep in Angrus Rampage after the mishap with Tamiyo, so Dream Trawler can be a really difficult threat for them to remove. I think I'm going to cut 2 of the Knight of Autumn, leaving 1 in, and just bring in 1 Aether Gust, 1 Dream Trawler, and see how that goes. The spell I'm most concerned about from our opponent would be Casualties of War. So I do like having Aether Gust to potentially slow that down. It's an expensive spell, so being able to delay them a turn can be really relevant. This is another great starting hand, so we're going to keep. And here we're a little bit slower. We won't be able to ramp until turn 3 unless we hit the growth spiral. So I think we are definitely drawing well with this deck. I don't need another land right now. So here we can growth spiral into Tamiyo and then play Uro. Tamiyo and Uro is a really strong combination, as it does allow us to quickly fill up the yard and bring Uro back. And here I am going to keep up Mystical Dispute and growth spiral at the end of their turn. Alright. So, not that we know that they have any blue spells, but there is a potential that they could off of Gateway Plaza. We'll just go ahead and growth spiral now that they've used up their mana. Okay. And here we are going to play Tamiyo. And I think looking for Nissa makes the most sense.
You will find my notes helpful.
We've also been really lucky with our Tamiyo hits. Alright, and that one does work. But unless they have removal for Nissa here, we should be in pretty good shape. And again, bringing to life non-forest lands is usually your best bet, unless there's a specific reason to bring back a forest. Just so you're not losing as much mana if Nissa survives and they destroy the land. Alright, so our opponent does have quite a bit of removal, but most of our cards generate card advantage. We'll go ahead and play out Uro here. So if they're trading 1 for 1, we're still in really good shape. And here we can play the Scryland because we'll still have enough mana for a full cost Mystical Dispute. And do we want another growth spiral? Probably not. So we should be able to counter anything they try to play here. And I think it is worth it to do so. We have plenty of cards to bring back Uro this turn as well. This does call... Oh, we should definitely attack first. The fact that Nissa lands have Vigilance is really nice, so you can get the attack and use them on the same turn. We'll go ahead and get rid of the lands, Growth Spiral, Shatter, and Dispute. And another Nissa is very nice. We don't quite have the mana to cast it this turn. Yeah, unfortunately for them, Elspeth Conquers Death is a really clean answer to that. Go ahead and attack and just play out another Uro. Teferi is an excellent draw as well. We should do this even though it is legendary. Since this one's going to the yard anyway, we'll just keep the other one. Alright, and Garrick is a good draw, but again, another Elspeth Conquers Death will take care of that really cleanly. So I think it makes sense to Nissa first, just maximize our mana. And we're going to use the Temple of Plenty as one of our green sources, as well as the Temple of Mystery. Want to really get the maximum value out of the non-forest lands. Go ahead and tap like this. We'll play the Hallowed Fountain first, actually, as our last source. Alright, and now we can Elspeth Conquers Death and Teferi. Alright, and that'll do it. So, round 1 in the books. And let's see who we get in round 2. So that one we definitely drew, I think, above average for this deck, but it seems like it's powerful enough that even in a slightly lower powered draw, we should be able to run over most of the decks in the format. Alright, we'll play first again. And this is a keep as well. It would be nice to have a Growth Spiral here, but I think Uro and a catch-all answer seems pretty solid. Additionally, we are going to be able to scry on our first turn. And I think I do like keeping Knight of Autumn here. We have a lot of lands. I don't really want to draw another one, and this could potentially help us in a lot of different matchups against Mono Red or Temur Clover. Alright, just an island, so we may be playing a control deck here. And off of Uro, we're really hoping to hit one of our Planeswalkers. We are playing blue-white control, it seems. And unless they have a Mystical Dispute here, this is a nice way to get a mana advantage over them. I feel like this deck is strongly favored against blue-white control, both because of the recursion and the ability to quickly overtake them on mana. We'll scry here. Mystical Dispute is excellent against what they're doing. Alright, and Teferi does shut off the counterspell, but we do have Elspeth Conquers Death and the ability to bring back, at the very least, an Uro. Obviously, it won't stick because it didn't escape, but knowing that we already have something in the yard to get some value out of it is nice.
That's more like it.
Interesting that they didn't bounce their Omen of the Sea. I think that's probably a mistake there. Even if it's going to cause them to discard, there's no reason not to have the ability to draw another card. So here we can consider a couple different plays. We can play Knight of Autumn, keeping up Mystical Dispute for something like a Narset. And that would allow us to pressure their Teferi. I don't love Elspeth Conquers Death on the Teferi if we don't have to. The only problem is that, unfortunately, the Mystical Dispute won't be live right now. Yeah, I think we are going to end up doing Elspeth Conquers Death, just because of the Teferi passive turning off our ability to actually counter an Narset on this turn. I overlooked that at first. And then next turn, hopefully we can start pressuring them with a 4/3 Knight of Autumn. And we'll actually have the ability to keep up a full cost Mystical Dispute to counter something like an Elspeth Conquers Death of their own. Or even a Shatter the Sky. Maybe one reason for them not to bounce Omen of the Sea is they can potentially scry with it here. The end of their turn. It looks like that's what they are planning on doing. So here we can play Tamiyo. I think that's probably better than Knight of Autumn. Start really generating some card advantage and loading up the yard for Uro. And then if they have Absorb here, we do have Mystical Dispute up. Oh, and actually they can't even cast Absorb. Our Elspeth Conquers Death just made it cost 2 more. It looks like that might be what's going on, actually. That might have been their initial plan, but the Elspeth Conquers Death could have potential to throw them off. I don't think I want to counter the Omen of the Sea. Seems like we should save our Mystical Dispute for a more impactful card. For newer players, I think the temptation is often to use a counterspell on anything that you possibly can. And I would just encourage players to kind of think about what actually matters if you're in that mindset of countering anything. So here, I'm pretty sure it makes sense to look for Nissa. Narset is also really crushing against control. But it feels like Nissa can really just end the game. So I'm going to search for that. Okay. And we'll play a tapped Temple Garden here. Alright, and then next turn we can bring back Uro. There's not a whole lot blue-white control can play here because of the Elspeth Conquers Death. So, the real question is, do we want to bring back the Knight of Autumn and have it be in play permanently, or do we want to ramp a little bit with Uro? It's unclear to me which one is obviously better. I think I like just having another threat that they have to answer. And we just want to make this as big as possible. Go ahead and put another land in the yard to exile with Uro. And I kind of like searching actually for Teferi here to really lock them out of countering anything we do. Since I am going to be planning on bringing back Uro this turn as well. Oh, and we would have hit the Nissa there. Let's attack first. Oh, we just put that in play, so never mind that. Alright, let's get rid of all of the lands. And then I'm definitely not playing another Knight of Autumn here. I'd like to have Mystical Dispute up to try to counter a Shatter the Sky. Oh, and we are lucky enough to find Teferi. So this is a very difficult decision. I'm tempted to try to play out the Teferi, but I think the only way they can survive is if they get rid of both of our creatures here. So I'm going to hold it in hand and keep up Mystical Dispute. Oh, and this is actually another really interesting decision. I am going to let this resolve. It is card advantage for them, but the ability to potentially counter that Shatter the Sky is way more relevant. Alright, and grabbing the Elspeth Conquers Death is also very nice. Alright, and that will lock up that game. So against Blue-White Control, the Knights of Autumn seem really underwhelming. Dovin's Vetoes seem excellent. I think it makes sense to bring in the Mystical Disputes as well. And if we cut Shatter the Sky, we don't really have an answer for Dream Trawler, is my one concern in taking them both out. Definitely going to cut at least one for a Mystical Dispute. I don't think I'm actually going to leave one Shatter the Sky in, just as a catch-all in case they do resolve a Dream Trawler. That way the game will not just end. So if that's the case, it may make sense to take one of the Mystical Disputes out of the sideboard. I'm using the exact Croaky's list. I think that in general, I don't need to bring in necessarily 5 counter spells against the other control decks. So I might look to use that slot to shore up some other matchups. It's also relevant that in this game we are on the draw. So I want to have some answers versus counter magic, just because there's more of a chance that they resolve their permanence and then we have to respond to their game plan. Potentially on the play, when we can put them on the back foot, it makes sense to get rid of the other Shatter of the Sky and bring in the 4th Mystical Dispute. Okay, let's see what we get. And yeah, we've hit some really solid opening hands, definitely keeping this 7. And this does allow us to turn 3 Tamiyo. And Growth Spiral just seems so good in anything but a super aggressive matchup. Just the ability to quickly get that mana advantage and then also draw a card so it replaces itself is incredible. Having said that, I don't know that I need 2 of them. Our next turns are kind of accounted for. We're going to Growth Spiral, Tamiyo, Nissa. It is possible they counter the first Growth Spiral. I'm going to keep it. If they do counter our first Growth Spiral, this gives us another chance to speed into Nissa on the following turn. Luckily, they have played Birth of Melita, so we don't have to worry about that. We'll go ahead and do this on our turn, so they cannot counter it. And I'm actually going to bluff at a Mystical Dispute here. This may make them think twice about just running out something like Teferi or Narset. And there's not really much downside since they don't pressure our life total. Now here it feels like they have Absorb. If that's the case, I do want to not play anything on our turn and then Growth Spiral. The other consideration is to just play out Tamiyo, since I do have Elspeth Conquers Death and the potential to buy it back as well. It's really close. I'm going to grab a Forest with this. I think I am going to make them play their counterspell now. This makes it less likely that they can counter Nissa. And as I said, we do have the ability to get Tamiyo back. Alright, and their Birth of Melita is flooded. So that's pretty good for us. It's possible they have Dovin's Veto, but I think we have to try to resolve Nissa. It's just too good if it does resolve.
Strange and magnificent.
And here we'll
The land shall
grab a non-forest land. This does prevent us from playing out Growth Spiral, but we don't really need the Growth Spiral right now, and if they do get rid of it, we'll save mana. Fortunately, they did hit our Nissa. I'm gonna go ahead and exile their Elspeth Conquers Death. In retrospect, it probably was slightly better to animate the breeding pool. But we'll draw that extra card now. Alright, so we'll lead with Uro. And there's no way we can play around Mystical Dispute with this Growth Spiral. So I'm going to scry first. Another Tameo is also a really solid draw. And go ahead and play this tapped and then Growth Spiral on their turn. Or after they scry. Alright, so they don't have the Mystical Dispute. Next turn, we are getting back Tameo from our graveyard and probably returning Uro. So that'll do it. 4-0 in game so far, and the deck has played out just like it looks. It's really powerful, lots of good planeswalkers, and the ability to generate consistent card and mana advantage. Check back in for the next video tomorrow, and hopefully we can 5-0 this first standard event. Thanks for watching. Bye.